All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome again to Handshake Insights training. My name is Jade Path, and I'm a product manager here. So I'm excited to walk you through the Handshake Insights functionality. We also have an advanced analytics training after this if you're interested in attending that one. If you're not finding these concepts challenging enough, definitely join us again at 11 a.m. Pacific for the Handshake Insights advanced training. But today we're going to be covering the basics of using Handshake Insights. We'll dive into the Explore functionality, some of the dashboards, and then also review quick downloads so you can see where to capture all that information. We already had a question come in from Edgar about reports that he wants to cover. So if you do have questions about reports that you want to make sure that we get through today, submit those to the question section. If you have questions throughout the training, make sure you also submit those. I'll cover those as they come in. But we'll jump right in. And I did post a link to a common report section in the Handshake knowledge base. So if everyone wants to open that up, you can actually start to click on some of those report links and start to look at them yourself as we go through this training. So how do members of your team get access to Handshake Insights? This is a really important piece. So in the user settings, there's a security role for Explore Insights, and you're going to have to give that to anyone on your team, or you're going to have to request that role to actually be able to access the Explore Insights functionality. So we'll take a look at that in the demo account, but you want to make sure if you don't have access to Handshake Insights, the Explore piece, that you go into your user settings or you request from anyone with the staff management role that you get added to that Explore Insights. There are a few different things that we need to go through for Handshake Insights and Looker, the embed product that we use. So there's a few definitions that are a little bit different. The tool is similar to Excel and allows you to quickly and easily visualize some of your data, but there are some key concepts that we have to explore first. So an Explore is going to be a base of your report. So when we open up Handshake Insights in a second in the demo account, what you'll see is that you have a Students Explore, you have a Career Fair Explore, jobs and interview schedules, and that's going to be the base of your report, so where you're starting from your report. A view is going to be a section, so once you open up that Explore, you'll have all of these different views that you can choose from. Students' education, for example, their career interests, so those views are kind of the second layer within that Explore. Dimensions are going to be columns that you'd like to include in your report. So anything that you select to include in your report, we refer to as a dimension. And then a measure will actually give you that data. So you can do counts of students, counts of career fair registrations, percent of students with a login, and we'll look at these. These are actually a different color in the system. So you can select those different measures that we've actually created for you on any of the Explorers. And then pivots are a little bit more advanced. We won't dive too deep into this in this session, but a pivot is actually 2 arguments, and it's definitely on the advanced side, so we won't actually dive in. If you open up any of those reports in that Common Reports article, what you'll see is that some of them do have pivots, and that just means that across the top of the reports, you're going to see those different columns. Any questions about some of that functionality? We'll go into all of these in detail as we look at some example reports, but just keep in mind that these are some of the terms that you're going to hear as we go through this training. Natalie had a question, is it possible to get a copy of the training to reference later? Of course, yeah, we'll be sending out a recording. We can also send a copy of the deck out. So just again, I want to talk about a dimension. It can be thought of as a group or a bucket of data, and a measure is information about that bucket of data. So as we think about selecting dimensions and measures, you're selecting groups of data that you want to look at, and then information, if you're looking at counts of students in a certain school year, the school year is going to be the dimension in that case, and the measure would be the count of students within that bucket of freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. So we'll take a look at a lot of examples and build out some reports, but just keep that in mind as we go through. So the first thing that we want to look at is filters. If everyone wants to open up their own Insights account, I'll just show you an example in our demo account here. So I'll jump over to an example. Here we are. If we click on the Handshake homepage, we'll be taken back to the dashboard. If you scroll down, you can click on Analytics underneath Data. And you'll always see the Insights dashboards. You can open these up and look into some of the reports there to get a high-level understanding of how appointments are doing in your office or how jobs and on-campus interviews are tracking this semester. But if we click on Explore Insights, we'll actually see all of these bases. So we talked about what a base is. That's going to be where you want to start your report from. So we see students, interview schedules, applications, employers, appointments. And if everyone wants to get to this page, we're going to be going through some examples. You can also click the links from that article that's in the chat section, but this is where we're going to be starting today. And if we open up one of these bases, we'll actually click on Students here, just so we can see what it looks like in Handshake. And here we now have our Handshake Insights view. So we can see the views on the left. This is campus, career interests, documents, that one level in from the base. And then if you open up, if we scroll down to the school year view, we can click on that. And then we see all of the different dimensions that we can choose from. The school year created at date, the school year name, updated date, and then we can see these measures for the count of school years and the name list of school years. If we select name here, that's going to choose that name school year dimension in our report, and you can see that right away it's added to our report. Let's go ahead and choose count here. You can make a pretty significant error here. We'll see what happens when we choose school year name and school year count. I'll actually go up to the top here and click on Run. And this is going to pull all of my school years, but you see that it only returns a school year count of 1. So whenever you're choosing measures, you want to make sure that you're in the correct view. So I'm interested in school year name as a dimension in my report, but what this is saying is I only have 1 alumni school year, 1 freshman school year. So I'm actually taking account of the school year since I've opened up that view. If instead I'm actually interested in the count of students within a school year, I need to look at a different count. I'm going to go ahead and unselect this. I can do that by clicking it here. And then I want to scroll down. I don't want the name list either, but I actually want the student count. So I'm going to open up the student view here and then scroll down all the way until I see the student count. So now when I run this again, go ahead and click Run in the top right corner. I'm going to see those numbers change pretty drastically. So I'm looking at the student count, but also I have school year selected as a column in this report. So now I can see that there's 46 alumni in this demo account, 46 juniors, 41 doctorate students, 39 master's students. So always think if the count doesn't make sense, in that case, the 1 student in the junior school year didn't make sense, you're probably selecting that measure within the wrong view in your report. Let me switch back over to our presentation here. And so here's just an example of how you can use filters. You can always select, we'll go in and actually filter down this data. We've selected our column here in this case, and then our count. But if you want to filter down to specific data, so you might want to look at the number of students only in freshman and sophomore school years, we can actually use that filter button located on the left side of the screen, and then we can select our filter that we'd like. So in this case, we're filtering on orders created at date, and we're looking at in the past 30 days. And there's a couple ways that you can get here. So we'll go ahead and do some filtering on our report that we've created here. So I'll go ahead, and we can get to filters 2 ways. So we can search for school year, and we can use this filter button located in that left panel. Or if the column is already in our report, we can actually use the setting button and then filter directly from here. So if you don't want to search for that filter on the left, you can actually use this settings icon and then click filter. What this is going to do is bring up a filtering option so we can see school year name. And then we want this to be equal to, let's go ahead and type in sophomore. And as we start to type in, we're going to see those options and freshman. I'll go ahead and click Run again, and what we'll see is our data now only reflects what we've filtered to at the top of the screen. So I'm only looking at the count of students in my demo account that have a freshman school year and the count of students that have a sophomore school year. And so Natalie has a question. For some reason, my counts have a question mark rather than a number. Natalie, if you want to go ahead and let me know what you're selecting as the columns in your report or those dimensions, I can cover that. If there is no data, If there's no data or no counts for that, you'll definitely see a null field or a question mark. So if you respond in that question section with what you're trying to run, we can take a look. Any questions on filtering data or the different fields that you might filter on? Dates are very common to filter, so you might want to understand the total number of student logins over a certain date range. That's a report that we'll look at in just a second. And then only school year name and student counts, Natalie. You should see that information correctly. If you select that, maybe click run again. It might not have finished running. So if the report doesn't look complete, try to click this run button in the top right corner again and see if that fills in that data. If you don't have school years in the system, you'll also see that those numbers don't exist, but most of you should have school years in the system. And yeah, Edgar, let's go ahead and filter on a range of dates. And great, looks like that report worked out. So let's look at student login dates. I think this is a great example. I'm going to go ahead and clear out all the filters in this example we're looking at right now. You can go ahead and use the settings icon in the top right and click remove fields and filters to start again from scratch. And so let's click this X here. And let's start off, we're going to look, the goal here is to look at student logins over the fall. So what we can do is search, if we'd like, on the left for login. And we can see that there's a couple different ways we can look at logins, students with a login or activities. So activities is going to give us the total logins. This is actually what I'm interested in. So I'll go ahead and click on total logins. And I want to look at total student logins over time. So I'm going to go ahead and exit this out again. Since I'm in that activities view, I want to make sure that I'm also looking at the time in that activities view. So I'm going to look at total logins as the measure. And then the dimension that I'm going to select is the created at date. So I'm going to go ahead and select date as another dimension or column in my report. I'm then going to filter this information. Remember, you can click filter here on the left, or you can use the settings to actually filter on that field. And then for date ranges, we have a few different options. We can do is in the past 7 days, is in the past 14 days, is in the past, we could change this to 1 month, or we can actually do in a specific range. So let's go ahead and select is in the range. And we'll do from September 1st all the way up until now. And then we can click run, so you can choose whatever date range you'd like. And this is going to have our total created, so we have created at date in our report, and then the total logins. You can see in our demo account, we're getting a lot of null values here returned, which means that no students logged in on those dates. In this demo account, we don't have a lot of students logging in, but it looks like around this certain time here we did. So if I wanted to see this in a visualization, I can go ahead and open up the visualization tool and see, wow, most of my logins happened in this week of October 23rd through November. So I might actually want to narrow that down a little bit further. It looks like from September through October, not a lot of logins. From January through April, not a lot of logins. So let's actually narrow this down a little bit further. Let's do November 1st to January 31st. Go ahead and run this again, and we'll see if this makes it a little bit easier to understand what's going on. So still, it looks like, all the logins happened 11/1, 11/2, 11/3, 2016. So I definitely am seeing some trends here. Really easy to understand that. You might also want to just exclude all null values from this list. So let's go ahead and look at this data again. We can see that we have a lot of logins happening here. But then we still see all these null values at the beginning of January. So if I want to exclude those null values or the times where no students were logging in, I can also select my settings icon at the top of those total student logins. I can filter this information, and I can actually select is not null or is not blank. I'll go ahead and click run again, and this will just narrow, it will remove all those values where there were no student logins. Now, it might be extremely valuable to understand when there are no student logins, so keep that in mind. But this will just create this report for us. So let's look at the visualization again. And this now helps us just include the information where there are actual logins in the system. So we can see again that trend that there were logins only on 11.1, 2, and 3. So to get to this report, we started off with the goal of understanding student logins over a certain date range. We selected that measure of total logins from the activities view on the left. We're in the Student Base Explorer. We filtered on created at date and then selected run again. Then we looked at the visualization to understand when the trends were in student logins, and we were able to identify that there were a few days that were really heavy. Otherwise, it really dropped off. We might want to then investigate what happened on those days. Did we send an invite email? Can we attribute those logins to anything external? And so there is a question about how could you download just the graphs. So right now, you can't download the graphs. We will be doing some updates and adding some new functionality here. You can't download the visualizations. What we recommend is that you actually, you could take screenshots of these visualizations. You can also download all the data. So if we get rid of this visualization and look at the data here, we can use the settings icon at the top and click download to download all this student data. And then we can do any visualizations in Excel that will actually download it into Excel. But we cannot right now share just these visualizations out. You can change them so that they represent what you're looking for using this edit icon. But you can also share. What we recommend is that if you'd like to share this report with another staff member in your office, you can actually click this share button. Then you might want to create a drive, a new Google document here with common reports. That's what we do with our common report list. And then we could do student logins over time. And we can actually link this out and share this with anyone in our office who has that Explore Insights role. And they'll be able to log into the system and see this exact report. So that's how we would recommend sharing those internally. And yeah, so Megan had the same question. Can we download the visualization as an image or another file? Right now, unfortunately, we can't. And there's a question about how long it will take. The student logins report is a pretty heavy report, so that one will take a while, and there's a lot of people using the system right now. If it's not running, it's not finishing, what I'd recommend doing is just stopping that report, running something maybe about students in certain school years or last login date. That one's going to be a little bit quicker. The total logins and unique logins take a lot of time and will process for a while, especially when other people are active in the system. We have 41 people right now, probably running reports at this time, so it's going to take a little bit longer right now. You might want to jump back to that report afterwards. And Edgar has another really good question. In the future, will Handshake allow reports to be saved, like a monthly report of new jobs posted and employers approved? We are working on saved reports and reports that you can send on a certain time over time basis, so we will update you when that's in the roadmap. Right now we're hoping in Q2 we'll be able to introduce those features, but we don't have a specific time on that. And how do you know if the total logins are students only and not administrative accounts? So actually, and Joanne, this is an awesome question. So administrative accounts, so right now we're only actually looking at students in this base, but sometimes Career Center staff members have sample student accounts that they're using. If you look at some of the filters, so let's go ahead and we'll go back here and we'll click on students again. So we're actually filtering, we're not using any other user types besides students, but a good way to double check this is if we go down, let me see if we even include it. Nope. So we're only filtering to students on the student base, but if you look, we add some filters in right away at the top of the screen that looks at students who are archived and takes those out of the reports. It looks at the student status is equal to active, so they're not disabled students, they're not archived students. So in this case, we're only looking at student accounts, but you could look and search for a user type. In this case, it's not relevant because we're only filtering to students here. But that's a great question. Other questions about filters, measures, dimensions, and those visualizations? Oops. And is anyone else having trouble hearing me? I'll make sure to plug in here so that we don't have any connection trouble. Yeah, there's a question about how to select the not null option. I only see or. So let me go in to our sample. Let me actually I'll open up an example report here that we have. And I'm opening a report here that has total logins and unique logins. Again, these ones are going to take a little bit longer, so if you're having trouble getting these reports to generate, try another report by school year, student count, or maybe career interests in student count. That's a really good one to try. But if we want to look at is not null, let's go ahead and we'll go to our filters. And let's include activity created at date in our report as a column. And I will run this. So I'm going to have some null values here. And we can see all of our logins. And then we see all these null values. So dates when students did not, there are no total logins, no unique logins. So let's go ahead and we will filter. So I'll go ahead and select that settings icon at the top of the screen. I'll select filter. And then we see this activities total logins. You have the option is equal to, is greater than or equal to, is null, is not null. And then you can select that is not null. That's right here. Any other questions about how to filter out that data that is null? Yeah, Carolyn, if you do have dummy student accounts, what we recommend is that you actually tag those accounts as career services accounts so that you can filter them out with a label. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's get rid of our null filter here. But if you do have student accounts for the Career Center, what you can do, if we get rid of this, let me go ahead and run this again. So now we have our total logins, total unique logins. If I want to look at this in a visualization, I can see that here. But if I want to filter out, what I can do is search for a label. And then I see this institution labels. And I can choose the name here and filter. So now what you'd want to do is look for, pretty common to say for the label to be career services staff or admin account. And so you'd want is not equal to. And then however you're identifying those career services staff accounts. So if you don't have those labeled, you want to make sure that you categorize all those career services student accounts so that you're not counting them in your login reports. You definitely don't want that. Awesome. And Megan has a really good question. If a career services staff views as a user, is that counted as a new login? I'm going to double check on that one with the engineering team to make sure that it's not, but I will follow up with that question, Megan. Really good one. It looks like when there are multiple filters, the option is or. Is there an option for and? So it depends on the filter that you're doing. So if you did is not equal to here, it's going to change to an and. So you could do is equal to and is not equal to. So anytime that you want to filter an and, it should give you the option, but you'll have to make sure that you change that so that you're not looking at is equal to and is equal to, because you can do the and. If you do is equal to, you can actually choose other fields here. So you could do disabled, and that's going to choose both of those fields. So the ands can always be included in the same list there. Or I'm sorry, the ors can always be included in the same list. If you want to do and, it's going to have to make sense with the filter that you're doing there. Okay, we'll go back to our presentation and look at a couple other reports. Okay, so now let's look at a visualization here and how we could change the visualization. So here I've selected total logins and unique logins. I'm going to go ahead and use the visualization here. And now I can see the total logins in a bar graph. Along the top here, though, you could choose to change the look of this, we could do a line graph. It doesn't make a lot of sense here. We could also do a pie chart. So if we wanted to do totals, oops. So we could do, so let's do school year name, and then we'll do total logins. So I'll go ahead and click on the setting icon and remove this. So we can look at a pie chart. Here we're looking again at school year and total logins. And then we can see the breakdown. Our demo account has surprisingly very similar data for all those school years. But you can really look at this however makes the most sense for you. There are also some more advanced settings here, like on a map if you're choosing location. And if you click on this edit icon, you can always change the colors of these if you're taking photos of them and sending them around using that edit icon on the right. So a lot of flexibility here with those. Pause, take a look at some questions here. And yeah, so Joanne, are the institution labels only available for certain types of dimensions? I don't see this option for staff member under the Appointments Explorer. So institution labels should only be, labels are a view. So you can see that labels here, institution labels are located as their own view. It might not be in the appointments. Let me actually check. So we'll go back and we're looking in appointments. And then let's look at, yeah, it doesn't look like the labels. Oh, yep. So it's just a different name. Student institution labels and appointments. So you can filter out exactly the same. Any labels that you're looking for on those students who have appointments, you can choose from that student institution labels. So this just means that the label is actually on the student itself. Okay. I'm going to go back to our presentation. So we looked at a count of student logins for a certain date range. If there are any questions about how to arrive at that report, please let me know. Next, what we'll look at is students with documents. So I would encourage everyone to try this, and you can break this down by a major. It looks like I'm missing a bullet here, but by college is another good one. So we're actually going to open up students with documents, and we'll walk through exactly how to create this report. And then we'll actually look at a count of students for each work authorization. I think that's always helpful to look at, especially if you're doing any analysis of jobs posted that require sponsorship or that don't require sponsorship. So let's go back to our test account. And we will click on students. And we'll look at total students with a public document. So let's go ahead, and we know we want to start with documents. So let's open up documents first. So I'll click on documents. And I want public documents, yes. So I want to know students with, all students with a public resume. So let's go ahead and choose public, and I'll just filter this information. So I want documents public is yes. And then, but this doesn't tell me what type of document I'm looking at. So I probably want to explore and see document types. So I do see that as an option here. I'll select this filter so I can filter on document types. And then we can see what types of documents we have here. It doesn't show up right away. It should start to pre-fill, but we want resumes. So we'll make sure that it's the right format here. And then we want the student counts with a resume. Oops, it's not pre-filling. So we don't want the document counts. Remember, if we do document counts, we're just going to be pulling in the total number of public resumes. We actually want the total number of students with a public resume on their profile. So now I want to look at students and then student count. So again, we started off, we knew we wanted to look at public documents, specifically resumes, and we want the count of students with a public resume. So we only have one measure here in this report. I can go ahead and click on Run here. And it looks like we have 330 students with a public resume on their profile. If you're curious about, you want to make sure the document type names is correct, you can actually include that if we just click on the name here and run this again, you can actually make sure that it's correct, that the document type name is resume here, just for sanity, to check that. And then we can remove that if we don't want that actually in the report. But now what we might want to understand is, okay, that's great that there are 330 public resumes in my system, but how does this break down for school year? So I always recommend starting simple. So add these fields to your report, make sure that you have what you're looking for, and then start to actually filter this down a little bit further or add different dimensions. As you add dimensions, it gets a little bit more complex. You might find that it doesn't run or it doesn't give you the data you're looking for. If you start really small and then build on the report, it usually gets easier. And you can always share these links with your staff for questions or with our support team for questions. So now that we have the total public resumes, let's go ahead and look at this by school year. So let's search for school year. We'll select a name as our dimension here so that it includes this in our report. And then if you see the question mark, it means you need to run it again. Let's go ahead and run this. And then we see our total public documents. You can always collapse this filter. There's a lot of filters on the students, so we'll go ahead and collapse that down. Now we see the total number of public documents for each school year. So we see 46 alumni, 46 juniors, and this means that they have a public resume on their profile. If you visualize this, we can look at it in a nice bar graph here. You can see that there are some students, so there's a null field here, which means that there is one public resume on a student profile that has no school year. I might actually want to understand who this student is, who has a public document and doesn't have a school year. So this would be a great way to really dive into this. So I might actually want to see now. Let's go ahead and choose a filter. And we'll filter to school year is null, so we can see who has a school year that's null. So go ahead and click filter. School year name. We'll select is null. And then, but I also want to know who is that student.